Hello and welcome back. I'm Nick Jackson, and what we looked at in the last episode was how we can build pipelines as code with Dagger. And what we said we were going to do in this episode was kind of take that to the next level, because we want to be able to define our infrastructure as code using Go and deploy it with our pipelines as code with Go for our Go app. All the Go. So kind of let's just dig straight into there and see. Well, let's just get it going. Right. Okay. Let's do a quick recap. So recapping, this is what we created last time. We created this repository, and what this does is this. Let me just open this up. We have this Dagger.go file, and Dagger.go is just kind of doing our build for our application, and everything is running inside of a container. So you define your pipeline using Go. Dagger executes those in BuildKit inside of containers, so it's 100% reproducible. We're doing our build of our application. We're then just grabbing that build artifact. We're creating a Docker container, and we're just pushing that. So what we want to do this time is we want to level this up, and we want to kind of push that code to DigitalOcean and create a working application. So the first thing that I want to do here is take a look at some updates. Now, since we did the first episode just 7 days ago, there's been some incredible usability improvements in the Go SDK. The Dagger team are working incredibly hard on this. So I think it's worthwhile that we upgrade our code, and we go through and we do a little bit of refactoring. So let's do that right now. So what I'm going to do is I am going to, well, if I can remember there we go, Dagger.go. And we're currently on 3.1. We're going to move this up to 4. So I'm going to do go get, I'm doing Dagger.go, and I'm just changing that to 4.0. And this is going to improve the syntax around directories. So if we go back over here to our Dagger file. Now, let me just quit out of this and open it up again, because I'm not 100% convinced that my IDE picked up the changes. Now it has. Okay, because it's giving me an error here. So this was the line previously. So what we had to do was we had to say host work directory, and then we had to call read on that and then get an ID. And that would create us a snapshot of that directory. Now, the syntactic sugar on that has improved, because now all we need to do is just use work directory. Work directory returns us a reference. So we can just save that, and then we can just use that as we would. So whilst we're just going through, and let's just tidy up these things here, make it look a little bit more readable, and I'll give you a quick recap. So we grab that directory, we then create a container Golang latest, we are mounting that directory there into the container, specifying the work directory and setting some environment variables. Now, once we've got that set up, what we can do is we can actually run an exec, and the exec is going to be the command that we would run in the container. I think what the kind of the cool thing about this is, have a look at this syntax here. Now, I did call this out in the first video, but since I've been working a little bit with Dagger, I truly appreciate why this is very, very nice syntax. But now golang.exec, this does not mutate. Exec here does not mutate Golang and add this executable step to it. What it does is it takes Golang and it appends the exec statement and returns me a new Golang. So very similar to the way that sort of slices or things like that work in Go with the append. Append doesn't actually mutate the object that you pass into it. It returns you a copy of it. Now, why that's important, why that's actually very cool, is that I now have the ability with these different references that I can basically branch, and I can diverge things. I can create a base Golang and then I can split it off in various directions. Very, very neat. So then we take that container there. Now, nothing is happening at this point. The exec doesn't actually happen here. This is because what we're doing is we're adding all of these kind of commands, or these, like commands, steps to Dagger's acyclic graph. So Dagger's working out all of those dependencies in the background for us. What we need to do after we've built our Golang application is we need to grab an artifact from it. And to grab the artifact, we're just going to create a simple directory and we're just writing a build folder. And then what we're going to do is we are going to grab that directory again. So in the same way as before, we did this, we can now simplify again. So we're doing build, we're getting a directory. Let's have a quick look at this. Retrieve a directory at the given path. And the path is going to be build, and that's relative to the working source of the Golang container. That's going to kind of store that reference there. I'm just not actually going to need this anymore, because if you look here, this is just returning me a directory. This is lazy instantiation. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to write that. So previously, when I wanted to write a directory from my build container to my local folder, I had to do this. So I had to do client.host.work directory, and then I had to do write and all of this sort of stuff here. Now this is completely simplified, because now all I do is build.export, give it my context, and I give it the path where I want to export the data to. And again, that's relative to my working directory. So that this is really, really pleasant. I can now clean up all of this code. This does give me an error and a Boolean if it succeeds or fails. So we're just going to throw that away. We are going to get the error. And we can just save that there. So this is, I think this is incredibly, incredibly nice. It's really, really sort of elegant. A heck of an improvement in a very, very short period of time. Lastly, what we're doing is we were just doing our build. So we're creating a new build container. And I'm just going to clean this up to make it a little bit more readable for you all. That was not what I wanted to do. Thank you so much. Sometimes IntelliSense tries to be too helpful. And we're just doing publish. So what we're doing here is we are creating a new container, we are building, and what we're doing is we're using our source folder to use as the kind of the build context, which contains our Docker file. Then we're going to publish to Nicholas Jackson Dagger examples. And of course, if there's an error, we're going to trap that error. And if everything succeeds, we're going to just report new container. The cool thing is that actually I'm adding, even though I'm calling these methods directory here and I'm calling exec here, none of this actually works or doesn't. No action is actually taken until I call export. Export is kind of like a call to action. It says, well, we need to do all of these things now in order to be able to do the export. So that's when the DAG is actually evaluated. And the same goes for down here. When I call publish, that is kind of a call to action. So it's super nice. You don't have to really think about it. It just works. Well, it might just work. We're going to give that a go. Let's see. So let's do go mod tidy. Okay. I'm going to go run /dagger.go. So this is just going to run that same build again, but it's just got our refactor in there. Everything seems to be working okay. Export, pushing layers, brilliant. So we've just refactored the code. We've made it a little simpler. We're now on the latest version of the Dagger SDK. Let's look at doing our deployment. So how are we going to do our deployment? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to use Terraform Specifically, what we're actually going to do is we're going to use the Terraform CDK. And the Terraform CDK allows us to write Go code instead of Terraform's HCL. And I think it's quite nice. But we've got the option to use TypeScript, Python, Java, C# or Go. Now, if anybody's kind of familiar with Terraform, you'll know what HCL looks like. It kind of looks like this. And the DigitalOcean app that we are going to create, which is DigitalOcean's managed kind of Docker containers, is going to look like this. Now, this is the HCL representation of it. We are going to do all of this in Go using the CDK. Hopefully. And then we're going to execute all of that with Dagger. And well, we're going to ask everybody to worship and give us a pay rise because it will be terrific. So let's look at this. Right. I have one app running. This is my my Video Ninja, which I use for streaming sometimes. But I'm going to kind of deploy that app into here. So we're going to see that happen. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to create a directory. So let's create a directory for our Terraform CDK, and I'm going to call it deploy. So make directory deploy, and I'm going to change into deploy here. Now to use the CDK, I need Node.js, I need Terraform, and I need the CDK application. So there's a few things that I need to install. Because of Dagger, everything has to run in a Docker container. So what I've done is I've already built a Docker container. I'm pretty sure it was that one, but I was looking at that documentation there. And it's called cdktf. So cdktf is a Docker container which has got all of those things built into it. So we can actually just run all of the CDK commands inside of this container to set things up, and yeah, it'll be nice. So let's go ahead and do that. So what command are we going to run for that? Well, we're going to run this this command here, and let's have a look at it. So the command is fairly lengthy, but it's actually also fairly straightforward. So we're doing docker run interactive terminal. We're going to remove when we're finished. We're mounting a volume, and the volume that we are mounting is the current folder. And we're just going to mount that into source. And then we're mapping the user, which is our current user, to the Docker container, because that way any folders or files that are created in a volume here, well, they're going to have our current user. They're not going to have to use sudo or anything like that to clean them up if they've been running as root. Importantly, and I'll come back to this, we're setting the DigitalOcean token. Now, the DigitalOcean token is the API token for DigitalOcean, and you can grab that from your, I think it's an API here, just on the left-hand side. And there we go, personal access tokens. So I've got one of those. I'm not going to show you what it is. I've made that mistake one too many times. But I've just set that as an environment variable. And the environment variable I've set it as is DigitalOcean token. And that's the same one that I'm going to pass through to the CDK Docker container, because that's what Terraform is going to expect to find. And then lastly, I'm just using this repo here, which is Nicholas Jackson cdktf. And I'm just grabbing a shell. So I'm in that folder there. If we have a look, there's nothing in it. So the first thing that we need to do when we want to create a new CDK program project is we're going to do cdktf init. So cdktf init. And what that's going to do is that's going to bootstrap us a new project. So it's saying, do we want to use Terraform Cloud for storage of state for your stacks? I'm not going to do it just yet. We will look at that when we kind of start looking at productionizing things, but I'm going to use local state at the moment. Now, the important thing that I kind of want to just mention now about state is that state can contain things like API keys and secrets. You do not, under any circumstance, want to commit this to GitHub. So it's kind of just a fair warning. The file will just be terraform.source.state or something. I'll kind of point it out again, but just be very careful with your Terraform state. That's why use the free Terraform cloud to store state. Template we want to use is going to be Go. And what is the project name? Well, the project name is going to be Dagger. Project description doesn't matter. And yes, we're going to send the crash reports because I'm probably going to cause a lot of crashes. So that has bootstrapped my project. If I take a look, you can see there we've got a Go mod, a Go sum, CDK config file, and a main.go. Let me just quit out of this and take a look at that folder. So main.go, we have just a very basic scaffold project. What we're going to do is we're going to start writing our Go code, which will do our deployment. And we're going to just start putting it into here. And it should be fairly straightforward. When I say fairly, right? Now, one thing that I want to kind of talk to you about, which is if you've never used Terraform or the Terraform CDK before, is that Terraform is distributed as a single binary, but then you have the concept of a provider. And what a provider does is it kind of interfaces with Terraform and the DigitalOcean. So we are going to need to install a provider because they are distributed separately as separate binaries. And it's fairly straightforward to do that. So to kind of install a binary, what we're going to do is we're going to do cdktf provider add DigitalOcean / DigitalOcean. And I know that's all the DigitalOceans, but if you kind of look over at the Terraform documentation here, and we just kind of go up to the main provider. Now the example usage is showing you the HCL. We are working on documentation around CDK, but ultimately it is translatable once you kind of know what to look for. It's fairly straightforward. But there's our source. That's the provider that we're going to install. And I'm going to add that. And what that's going to do is that's going to go and collect that from the Terraform registry. It's going to install it as a Go package, and we've got that installed there. Now, what I also need to do is I just need to, because I'm running that in a Docker container, I'm just going to do a Go mod tidy here, just to make sure that I've got everything. All right. Okay, main.go. So the first thing, what we're going to do, we need to first initialize the provider. So to initialize a provider, I've got to create an instance of it. So I can use the DigitalOcean, and it is new DigitalOcean provider. Oh, give me a hint here. Hang on. I'll tell you what. I know why. It's because of the namespaces. DigitalOcean. There we go. New DigitalOcean. We're gonna. Okay. So right. Let's just quit out of that. Let's do a Go mod tidy. Are you happy now, computer, or are you still going to be a pain in the backside? I do need to fix this, but it's one of those things when you kind of know how to sort of work around it, you kind of just work around it. DigitalOcean provider. Now, DigitalOcean provider takes a couple of parameters. What we have is the scope, and the scope is kind of allows all of these things to be glued together. So we've got to pass the scope into every resource. We're going to give it an ID, and it's an ID is a string reference, which I'll kind of come back to, and also the configuration. So let's just look at that. So first things first, the scope is our stack, which is as defined here in line 10. Then we need to give it a name. So the reason that we've got to pass this as a string reference is because of the way that the CDK works. It ultimately kind of is doing a whole bunch of stuff where the Go code is boiled down to TypeScript, where there's a bunch of TypeScript bindings, which are then kind of do the conversion into JSON, which is then evaluated by Terraform. Under the hood, it's not something you have to worry about, other than you do have to use these string references. So we can use the JSSI package in order to do this, and I'm just going to call it DigitalOcean, and then what I need is a configuration. Now I'm not making any changes here, so I'm just going to pass it a blank configuration. And that is my, well, if my package had imported correctly, is it pulled in the wrong one? All right, so we just need to import the correct JSSI package, and that is this one here. It's github.com AWS JSSI runtime. And this is going to give us some convenience methods for just converting backwards and forwards. So that's our provider created. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create the application and the definition for that application. So what does that look like? Well, let's just bounce over to the documentation. So this is the HCL representation of what we're going to do. We're going to create a DigitalOcean app. We're going to give it a name and a region. And then we're going to define a service. And you can define multiple services inside of this block here. Give it a name and some various other different bits and pieces. Now, we can actually do things like build packs and things like that with DigitalOcean apps. We can also use static sites. But what we're going to do is we're going to use a Docker container. All of the documentation does exist, and it's all here on the registry for .terraform. And it is loosely translatable. Look, I think you'll see. Let's go back over to the code. So we're going to create this app. So we'll do app, and it's going to be DigitalOcean.new DigitalOcean app. Now, if we look at the kind of the setup again, we've got that scope. We give it a reference for a name, and we give it an app config. So let's do that. Scope, stack, the ID or the name that we're going to do. So it's JSSI. We're just going to call it Dagger. And then what we're going to do is we are going to create, and it's just DigitalOcean dot. I'm going to create a new app config. And app config has a spec, because if we bounce over to the docs, you'll see here we have our spec, we've got static site, and all of these other parameters, so we can start populating these. So the spec is going to be DigitalOcean app spec. And the first thing is we need a name. So we're going to, everything again has to be these JSSI or string references. I'm just going to call it Dagger. We're going to give it a region. The region that we're going to use is going to be Amsterdam. And we will see how we can kind of go through and tidy these things up later on. What is it complaining about? Cannot use DigitalOcean app config literal. Why did I create that as a data? Well, I mean, it would help if I created this using the correct syntax, wouldn't it? It's just new app. Look, it's free content. What can I do? I'm not like, I didn't say I was competent. Anyway, we're going to go through, we're adding the region. The next thing we need to do is define our service. So now service is, if we kind of look at the documentation here, it's just telling you that service is an interface. Now, service is not actually a single type. What service is an array of DigitalOcean dot, the type is app spec service. Now, it would help if I could type. So again, if you kind of look over at the browser, you can kind of see this here. We've got static site. If you're ever worried or kind of wondering what's going on, if you look through the documentation, so we can see a spec can contain multiple components, a service can contain. So, you know, it's telling you that you have, this is actually an array. But anyway, so we're going to do DigitalOcean app service. We are going to add our service in here. So let's create a new one of these, DigitalOcean app service. And we can set up the properties of this. So the properties of this we're going to set, well, the first thing we need a name, because service within an application, you can have multiple services for an app. We're only going to have one, so we're just going to call everything Dagger. Then what we do is we need to set the HTTP port. And if we don't set the HTTP port correctly, then the application is not going to start. It's going to kind of fail those initial checks. Now, this is a number, and when we built our application, we had it running on port 9090. So we'll set that up there. And then the next thing that we want to do is define our DigitalOcean image. So we're going to specify image, and this is going to be of type DigitalOcean app spec service image. We need to specify these specific options. So first things first, we need to specify the registry type. Now the registry type, you've got the option of using DigitalOcean container registry, or you can use Docker Hub, and that's what we are going to use there. We then need to specify the registry, and the registry is, in this instance, going to be Nicholas Jackson, which is where I'm creating my, well, placing my Docker images. And then we're going to have the repository, and the repository is going to be the name. So that was Dagger example. And finally, we can specify the tag, and I'm going to just use latest there. Now, by default, this will create me a kind of the smallest possible image, but I can also specify the instance type slug, and this is going to be basic XS, XXS, extra small. And of course, it's complaining there because this needs to be a string reference. All right. So that is our application created. Now, the nice thing about Terraform, the nice thing about CDK is that you define these resources. When you're kind of linking them together, Terraform works out what the dependencies are amongst them. What you can also do is you can actually utilize the parameters. So for example, new app is going to create new app. It'll do that, and with all of the parameters that I'm also setting. But what it's also going to do is it's going to, well, I can't get into that one, but it's going to define me and allow me to access a bunch of other additional parameters. So I can use those. If I create a Terraform output, then Terraform output, when I finish running my cdktf command, it'll basically spit out some stuff to the command line. So it's kind of like just doing, it's not quite like a log out because it is structured, but let's just have a look at it. So we're going to do cdktf dot terraform output, new terraform output. There is definitely I'm going to say stack, give it a name, so JSSI string. We're going to call this live URL, and then we're going to give it some options. So it's cdktf terraform output config, of which we've got the ability to specify a value. And then what I can do is I can use app dot. And here are all of the various properties, not all of which I'm setting. Some of them are going to get computed, so they're going to be returned from DigitalOcean API. And one of those is the live URL. So that's my Terraform configuration. So what this is going to do is this is going to register the new provider. It's going to use the environment variable that I'm setting. We're defining a new application. It's going to use our Docker Hub registry that we're building from Dagger, and then it's going to create an output. So let's kind of give that a quick look and see how that looks. So just bouncing back into my container. If I do cdktf plan, what plan is going to do is it's going to build my configuration, and it's going to tell me what change is going to be made. And this is why the state's so important, because Terraform uses a state to do a diff between the configuration that you've defined and resources that you've already created. So in the instance that I add, say, a new app, Terraform will know that there's a new app added. It doesn't have to go and recreate everything. It can only change the things that need changing. And likewise, when you delete something from the configuration, Terraform knows that it was something that is previously created, therefore it can go and delete it. So plan is literally just kind of like doing a dry run, and we will see this in just a second. It's just downloading the provider, installing all of that. And there we go. So you can see there, if I kind of back scroll, Terraform has it's generated me what it calls a plan, and that's going to tell me all of the things that are going to change. So you can see here this known after apply. These are computed fields. So these are going to be returned by the API. I'm not setting them. You can see the fields that I am setting. Got Dagger there, and then we've got the size and the instance count and things like that. Now we're not going to apply this right now. We're going to do that through our Dagger configuration, but this was just kind of a test. Sanitized to make sure that everything is working fine, which it does seem to be. So let's exit there. Right. Next thing's next. Let's now go back to our Dagger configuration and let's go and do our build. So I'm just going to back into here, into Dagger Go. So I'm scrolling down to the very end. So we do our build, we do our publish. The next thing we want to do is we want to start doing our deployment. So to do our deployment, what we're going to do is, again, we can create a container. So cdktf, that's what I'm going to call it. And it's going to be client.container. And then we can do .from. And the from, I'm going to use Nicholas Jackson cdktf latest, which is my Docker container, which contains cdktf and Go and all of the bits and pieces that I need. And then what I can do is I'm going to define an environment variable. So I'm going to say with environment variable, DigitalOcean token. And then we're going to set a value for that, which is going to be, we're just going to do os.getEnv DigitalOcean token. And then what we will do from here is we're going to also start looking at our mounted directory. So we can say with mounted directory, and where are we going to put this? So we're just going to put this into source. And the directory that we're going to use is our source directory. So now let's actually have a look at this. So rather than mounting the entire source directory, there is something that we don't want. So in our deploy, what the CDK is going to do is it generates this cdktf, and it's got this output folder where it's kind of doing all of its serialization. We don't want to copy that into the container. We want to ignore that folder. So let's have a look and see how we can kind of use the directory command, but we can kind of just exclude that. So let's create, we'll call a folder, we're just going to call it deploy. And what we can do is we can do client dot host, and we can then do dot work directory. So we're going to get the current folder. And then what we can do is we can say directory. So I can get a subdirectory inside of there. So I'm going to get my deploy folder. And this is what I really like. What I can do is I can say without directory. So I can basically get a snapshot of a folder and I can exclude certain items. So I'm going to exclude the cdktf folder. And then when I mount it, I'm going to use that one. I'm going to do mount with deploy. And that's nice. So we're going to now, we need to set the working directory. So with work directory. So this is exactly the same as what we did before. Working directory is going to be source. And then we do need to wipe out the entry point because I put an entry point into my Docker container and, well, it doesn't like that. So we're going to get rid of that. So I'm just wiping out the entry point. So now I've got that cdktf, I've got that kind of blanket thing set. What I can do is I can now reuse that and I can start adding my execs. So cdktf. And again, I'm doing the reference because it's going to pass me back a copy. cdktf.exec. The exec takes a Dagger container exec options, and container exec options are fairly straightforward in that it takes args. So the args are going to pass as a string. So we're going to do cdktf, and we are going to do get. So cdktf get. That's going to download any modules or anything like that. We can just kind of run that. And then what we will, hang on, come on, brain. Well, it does help if I can code. So we will we'll do that. Let's have a look. Cannot use container exec options. Oh, it's not a reference. And then we'll do another exec. And this time what we're going to do is we do again dagger.container exec options. This is where we'll do our command to do a deploy. So the command to do a deploy with CDK is going to be cdktf, and it's going to be cdktf apply. Now, in addition to apply, what I need to do is I need to specify some options, because if I actually run cdktf apply, what it will do is it will kind of run that and it'll ask me, hey, are you sure? So if I look at the command there, cdktf And oh gosh, I didn't want to do that. So if I look at the command there, cdktf, apply, and just get the options, you can see that we have this auto approve option. And auto approve is going to always just answer yes. And that's what we want when we're running it unattended like this. We're not running it interactive. So we're going to do auto approve. That is now our exec. And what we can do is we can then get the state file. So it's important that we capture the state file out of the container because we need to cache this, because we need to reuse this. It's not something we can throw away. So I'm just going to, for now, I'm just going to grab this state file and I'm just going to put it into my local folder. There's a bunch of great documentation and videos and things like that on how to manage state and do things with Terraform. We're kind of doing the easiest thing for now. We'll kind of look at some of the more mature ways of doing it when we get on to productionizing this. So state, I am going to, again, I'm going to do cdktf dot, I want to grab the directory, and the directory that, actually, hang on a second, cdktf dot, okay, so rather than using a directory, what I can actually do is I can use file, because there is only one file that I want, and that is going to be, it's in the deploy folder. It's going to be terraform dot source dot tf state. And if you kind of had run and apply, you would kind of see this file, but this is the Terraform state file. So we're going to do that there, and then what we're going to do is we are going to export that, and we're going to save it into our deploy folder. So we can do state dot export. Really liking this new syntax. So much cleaner. When I do an export with a file, I can't just give it a directory. I've actually got to give it the directory and the file that I want to store it into. Oh, this also needs a context, sorry. All right, and then let's just grab an error message and we will say, I'm going to say error creating, error deploying application to DigitalOcean. And I'm going to capitalize the D and the O because I respect DigitalOcean. All right. So that's kind of all we need to do. This should work. Well, let's give it a go. So we're going to do the right folder, go run Dagger Go. So let's see. Good things that I seem to have not made a pebcac on the typing. So it's doing the compile. It has got our application. It's built our container. It's pushed the container to Docker Hub. It's now running our CDK. So CDK apply auto approve is running. Well, that's good news. Let's go over to DigitalOcean and apps. And, well, there's nothing happening yet. That doesn't mean, does it mean that I've made a mistake, or does it mean there's nothing happening yet? Okay, stack deploying. Let's go back over here, refresh my browser. Oh gosh, the excitement. Back over. Says it's got everything looking great there. Still creating. Just gonna have a quick, I'm refreshing my browser like I'm trying to get tickets for Taylor Swift. There we go. It's created our application, Dagger Basic, less than 5 seconds ago. Let's have a look at our URL, live app URL. Hello, Dagger. I might have done something right for once. Back over to our code. and we can see that everything has worked correctly. We have our Terraform state. Now let's just take a look at that Terraform state. Cd deploy, and you can see here this is all of Terraform's internal stuff. There can be secrets in here. That's why I'm saying to you, be very, very careful. Do not commit this to GitHub. And it's best to put it inside of a git ignore, just as a kind of a matter of fact for this stuff. Now, the nice thing about this is because we're using the CDK for Terraform, if I do that Dagger run again, now what's going to happen is obviously everything is cached, so it's going to run super quick. I'm going to run the CDK again. Now the CDK is going to do a check, and it's going to say, well, there's nothing changed. So it should just give me an error message. Give me back a message here in just a moment that says nothing has changed, therefore I've got nothing to do. So it's not going to go and redeploy the application, which is, it's pretty nice. That's why I like Terraform. So we'll just give that a couple of seconds. There we go. And there you can see there are no changes. Your infrastructure matches the configuration. Perfect. A success. So let's recap. And then next time, we're going to dig into this and start making it productionized and getting it running on GitHub Actions. So we've created our configuration, Dagger Connect. That connects to the Dagger engine. The Dagger engine it's basically under the hood. It's a GraphQL API that has the capability of running multiple parallel Docker containers and Docker builds. It's got the ability to kind of do all of the nice syntax around mounting files and copying files and things like that, and making it super easy to interact with Docker Build Kit. We're grabbing a reference to our current working directory using the new syntax of the 04 SDK. We're creating a container using Golang as base, mounting our source directory into it, setting the working directory, and an environment variable to disable cgo so that we don't have any issues with Alpine. We're then doing our build, standard Docker build, creating a local output folder, and then we grab the reference from our build container. And this is very nice. Once we've grabbed that reference, we can do build.export, and we can just copy that out to our local folder. Then what we're doing is we are creating a new container, but this time we're building from source, which uses the Docker file, which I have just here. Pushing it to Docker Hub. We are then creating another container or another task, which is using the cdktf. We're doing our deploy using Terraform CDK, using our Go code to deploy our Go code with our pipeline written in Go. All the things. We're capturing the Terraform state, because remember, state is really important. We want to capture the state. And we're saving that locally. And that's it. We are done. A success. Now, thank you so much for watching. Next time, on the next one, we're going to look at how we can productionize this. So we're going to look at getting it ready to run on GitHub. We're going to start parameterizing some things and kind of looking at as well how we can create things like a GitHub release, which I think is going to be really, really cool. I think, big shout out to the team at Dagger. The SDK is really, really coming along. They are listening to you. So some of your comments that you left in the last video, the Dagger team have been looking through those, and some of those have been responsible for the changes that you're seeing today and some of the changes that you're going to see soon as well, which I think is amazing. So, props to them, and also, go show them some love, get on Discord. If you like Dagger, tell them you like Dagger, and it's an open source tool. So if you can spare a little time, help out. I will see you on the next one. And until then, keep writing some microservices, building some Go, and have a great time.